Honorable members and colleagues and our dear guests, we are supposed to have a keynote speaker who is...
Thank you, Honorable. Honorable Helen, how would you not take note of our Muguli in this place? The Honorable Elias Luimbazi Nalukola, Member of Parliament for Kawempe North. You're welcome. This is his first parliamentary activity because after he was sworn in, he went back home. Since Parliament is on recess, we are glad to parties, honorable members of Parliament, former national leaders, civil society organizations, distinguished guests, director and staff of the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We are delighted to have you join us this morning. Thank you for making the time. I want to take note of colleagues on this end with myself. At the extreme, she was not properly introduced. That is Madame Agnes Chirabo. She's the Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance. She's very passionate about food and making sure that all Ugandans are healthy and get to eat quality food. Of course, former leader of the opposition, the Honorable Winnie Kiza. Thank you for joining us in that capacity. I'll talk about the others later, or the other for that matter. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great responsibility, obligation, and deep commitment to our nation that we present the alternative budget priorities for the financial year 2025-2026. These alternative budget priorities reflect the needs, aspirations, and realities faced by the people of Uganda. This year's alternative budget priorities were born out of a consultative process. We reached out to all opposition political parties, plus some civil society organizations, to share their input, and would like to appreciate all those who gave us feedback on the same. The past year has been yet another chapter in the government's long history of economic mismanagement. Ugandans are struggling to afford basic needs, while those in power prioritize personal wealth accumulation over public service. The government's reckless spending on fraudulent projects, while neglecting essential services, is a betrayal of the social contract they have with the people of Uganda. Let us consider the Lubowa Specialized Hospital Project. This is a project which is a clear example of organized corruption, in my very considered opinion. The government has spent billions of taxpayers' money on this project, yet there is no clear deadline on when it will open. At the same time, public hospitals across the country lack funding and cannot even provide basic care. Because of this, many Ugandans are forced to either seek treatment overseas or to suffer in poorly equipped health facilities across the country. The situation is no different for companies like Day Biopharma Limited, Atiak Sugar, Rocco Construction Limited, and Inspire Coffee Factory, which have benefited from dubious state funding without clear accountability mechanisms. These projects, ladies and gentlemen, have become channels for siphoning public funds, further entrenching a kleptocratic system that prioritizes elite interests over national development. Our alternative budget priority areas, ladies and gentlemen, are grounded in the principles of equity, fiscal responsibility, and public accountability. We are committed to realigning Uganda's financial priorities to serve the people of Uganda. And that's specifically why we are bothered about some of these very odd projects that I've just mentioned about. In the past couple of months, as the opposition, we've been going to these various projects, Atiak Sugar, Day Biopharma, Inspire Coffee Africa, Rocco Construction Limited. Billions of shillings have been injected into these projects, and not much is happening. What's even more problematic is that government gives taxpayers' money to these projects. There's no memorandum of understanding at all. Then government says we are buying shares in these companies. When you ask what's the value, what's the worth of this company, that has not been ascertained. So that shows you the confusion within which government operates. And whenever we mention these things on the floor, I've had people like the Honorable Nabanja say we are making government look bad, forgetting that government looks bad on its own accord. Ladies and gentlemen, the economic outlook for the 2025-2026 financial year remains uncertain. Uganda's total budget has been projected at 71.9 trillion shillings. Persistent fiscal indiscipline, excessive borrowing, and corruption have put immense pressure on our economy. The high cost of debt servicing, which consumes over 30% of our budget, has left little room for investment in critical sectors. Inflation remains a huge concern, with rising prices of essential commodities such as food, fuel, and healthcare. Meanwhile, revenue collection remains suboptimal due to inefficiencies in tax administration, revenue leakages, and inadequate enforcement of tax policies. Our people deserve a budget that works for them, not one that burdens them with unnecessary taxes and then poor service delivery. It's one thing for you to tax the population. It's another for that tax money to be of value to the people of Uganda. As I'm sure many of you know, there are countries where the citizenry pay hefty sums in tax, but they know that when they go to hospital, they'll get good quality medication, courtesy of the government. When they take their children to public schools, they'll attain quality education. The infrastructure is worked on. So the taxpayer knows that when I pay heavily in tax, what is left is really for me. That's not the case for Ugandans. You'll pay heavily in tax, but when you're sick, you'll have to go to private facility for those that can afford, because there's not much in the public ones. You'll have to take your child to a good school for those that can afford, because the UPE schools are tenement structures about to collapse. You see the state of our roads. So we are saying there must be value for taxpayers' money. Let me talk a bit about some key sectoral priorities. And ladies and gentlemen, we have availed two booklets to you. One is a compendium of our alternative budget priorities, highlighting what we do propose, what we would do had we been the ones in power. And like I said, this is a consultative process to see that we get the views of different political parties, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders, so that it's not just our budget, but it is reflective of the people of Uganda. I want to encourage us to find time and read those books and even critique them. It's important that we keep getting feedback. Yes, we did consult, but it's important that as we keep going, you look at what is it that we are proposing. Many times you hear people say, the opposition just opposes. No, that's not the kind of opposition we want to be. We want to be a government in waiting, a proper government in waiting that offers credible alternatives. So I'd like to encourage us, please read. So for those that keep saying we just oppose, find time and read. And I know those people are not in this room, they're out there. So I'm encouraging them, find this work and read it. And we are going to share it on social media. We'll have those links so that people can read and know what it is that we are about. But let me share a few sectoral. The other booklet, of course, is my address for today that captures a couple of those things. One, finance, planning, and economic development sector. The Ministry of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development is responsible for mobilizing financial resources, regulating public expenditure, and ensuring sound financial management. However, Uganda faces significant fiscal challenges, including a rising public debt burden, inefficient budget execution, and financial leakages through corruption and mismanagement. Uganda's debt servicing obligations consume a substantial portion of our national budget, with 21.61 trillion shillings allocated to treasury operations in financial year 2025-2026. Commitment fees on unused loans alone have cost the country 469.8 billion shillings. Imagine that. Between financial year 2018-2019 and 2023-2024. That's a lot of money that is thrown down the drain. Frequent supplementary budgets totaling 6.54 trillion in the current fiscal year alone. And all of this signals poor financial planning and cash flow constraints. Here is what we must do regarding this particular sector. One, we must improve public debt management to reduce excessive borrowing and commitment fees. That's what we are saying as the opposition. Two, we've got to strengthen budget discipline by eliminating unnecessary supplementary budgets. You see, supplementary budgets are a sign of poor planning or no planning at all. Because if you plan, your supplementaries should only be about the unforeseeables. You know that maybe a tragedy happens, like we are seeing now, floods in different parts of the country. Here in Kampala, in Kasese, previously we had a challenge in Bududa and elsewhere. That's when a supplementary budget makes sense. But sometimes they bring to us a supplementary budget, including salaries for civil servants. Ridiculous. How do you not plan for salaries of people that you have as part of your staff? And then that has to come through a supplementary budget. This drama has got to stop. We've got to enhance domestic revenue mobilization by closing tax loopholes and enforcing compliance in high-value sectors like gold mining. While every Ugandan pays their fair share of tax, there are people who don't pay taxes in this country. Ordinary people that sell, little things in their shops downtown, you'll see KCCA running after them to pay tax. You'll see shops being closed, that they've got to pay tax. But people who mine gold and they are raking in billions upon billions of shillings, they're not paying taxes. And we are wondering why. When I was still chairperson of COSASE, one of the reports we tabled, that was the URL report, we were castigating this particular aspect, saying it is problematic. And I remember that time, the figure was 700 something billion. It keeps growing. Why do these people not pay taxes? The answer is because these are the powerful people in this country who are operating in this trade. They'll exempt themselves while everybody else does pay tax. This has got to change. There's got to be equity. We've got to combat corruption by fully implementing anti-graft measures and holding accountable those responsible for financial mismanagement. Our theme for this year's alternative budget priorities is combating corruption the effective way to sure service delivery. I believe that with all of my heart. For us to have effective service delivery in this country, one of the things we need to tackle is corruption. We lose over 10 trillion shillings per year to corruption. That's about a third of what URA collects. And many times they don't even hit their targets. Just think about how many hospitals that money can build, how many roads across the country that 10 plus trillion shillings can fix and build, how many schools, how many factories. We have a lot of unemployment in this our country. How much can that money do? So that's why we are saying that combating corruption to effective service delivery. That's the only way. Because even that money which is available for service delivery is stolen. We've got to improve budget transparency and public financial management systems to ensure effective resource allocation. Let me talk a bit about health. Uganda's health sector faces significant challenges, including underfunding. Only 6.1% of the national budget is availed. Of course, there's inadequate infrastructure under the same, and shortages of health workers. We have one doctor per 25,000 people. No wonder people die unnecessarily. We've got stockouts of essential medicines, and that affects 40% of health facilities, while maternal mortality remains high at 336 deaths per 100,000 live births. Non-communicable diseases are rising, accounting for 33% of hospital admissions. And mental health services are severely underfunded, with 75% of patients untreated. Emergency response systems are weak, with only one ambulance per 200,000 people. Imagine that. This government, in its previous manifestos, promised the country an ambulance system across the country. But today, it is members of parliament that have got to buy ambulances. Why? Because you have an absentee government. Why should that be your role as a member of parliament, that you buy an ambulance and take care of that health situation? Government has got to do that. And that's what we are saying we would do had we been in power, so that people get to see value of their tax money. We also see the challenge of out-of-pocket health expenditures, 41%, which disproportionately burdens poor households. We propose the following actions. One, we've got to eliminate medicine shortages by partnering with local pharmaceutical manufacturers, and that money can be availed. We've got to increase funding for primary health care through a 5% levy on luxury goods. This is doable. We've got to reduce maternal mortality by deploying 100 mobile maternal health clinics in rural areas so that our mothers stop dying while trying to bring forth life. We've got to address health worker shortages. And this can be done severally. One, offering, for example, 1,000 scholarships for medical and nursing students. It is doable. We've got to combat non-communicable diseases through nationwide screening. And we can do this in even 500 health centers. We've got to strengthen emergency response by procuring, at the bare minimum, 200 ambulances and 1,000 responders. This is doable. We've got to expand mental health services by training at least 500 community health workers and establishing 100 mental health units today. This is a critical challenge in our country, ladies and gentlemen. And I know sometimes when you think about mental health, you're thinking of, as people refer to it, mad people. No, people are struggling. We need to take care of this. We need to implement enhanced mosquito control programs to complement ongoing malaria control efforts. There's no reason why people should be dying of malaria in 2025 if you have a serious government in place. Let me talk about Kampala Capital City Authority. The Omlord is here. And we also have our shadow minister in charge of Kampala, the Honorable Balimwezo Ronald Nsubuga. Ladies and gentlemen, Kampala faces a severe strain from rapid urbanization, with rural urban migration and population growth overwhelming the available infrastructure and services. The city grapples with a poor road network, chronic flooding due to inadequate drainage. Recently, we lost nearly 10 people in a one-day's flooding alone in Kampala here. Uncollected solid waste causing health hazards and insufficient housing and social amenities. Budget constraints limit KCCA's ability to address these issues, compromising education, healthcare, and economic productivity. Government said it was taking over the administration of Kampala, and they said they're going to do a good job. So they are in charge, literally. We have political leaders, and I've heard some ministers say, but well, the opposition is the one that is in charge of the leadership of Kampala, from the mayor, members of parliament, division mayors, councillors, and so on. But who administers the city? Who really? You see the Lord Mayor there, assuming there was flooding in his area, he would also have to make a call to the technical wing and plead, please come and fix this issue. And it might take days on end for that to happen. So as government, you said you are taking over to fix this issue. You have failed miserably, as is expected. We've got to improve urban planning and zoning to curb haphazard development. We've got to expand and upgrade road infrastructure to reduce congestion. Modernize waste management systems, including recycling initiatives. There's no reason why garbage should be killing people in this day and age. Just think about it. That a heap of garbage, kasasiro, kills people in this day and age. We are very unserious as a country. And yet we know what to do. We've got to rehabilitate drainage systems to prevent flooding. We don't know who issues these permits and approvals. Buildings keep coming up every single day. Drainage is not taken care of. We've got to invest in social services such as education and healthcare facilities, and also promote affordable housing projects to address the question of slums. Many of our ordinary folks live in a very debilitating state when you go to some of those slum areas. No wonder they are always sick with one ailment after another. And it is fixable if you are committed as a government. That's what we would do. Of course, it seems to be rocket science to the people in charge currently. Let me talk a bit about presidential affairs. The Office of the Presidency faces systemic governance challenges including financial indiscipline. 488% budget increments for classified expenditures. Let me repeat that. 488% budget increments for classified expenditures. Now, every country ought to have a classified budget, but ours is ridiculously unexplainable. It keeps growing by the day, and you cannot justify it. And that's why we're saying that's the channel of corruption. Money for the people in charge. Because even when we are to go at war or to involve ourselves in military operations, for example, UPDF is in Sudan, South Sudan. They had to come for a separate budget for that. So these huge trillions in classified, what exactly do they do? It does not make sense because there is a budget for defense that caters for all of these different things. And you see, the challenge about classified budgets is you and I don't get to scrutinize them. And that's a cover they use to steal taxpayers' money. This nonsense has got to stop, ladies and gentlemen. That's the only way we can have money for effective service delivery. Because government keeps crying and saying, well, there is no money. There is money. There is money, but it is put in the wrong places. We've got bloated administrative structures with duplicated agencies. Wasteful expenses on RDCs and their multiple deputies. You have an RDC, deputy RDC, assistant RDC, and a plethora of structures therein. Poor budget performance with irregular supplementary allocations and persistent corruption, despite anti-graft measures, all undermining public trust and fiscal responsibility. These are some of the things we propose to deal with these issues. We've got to streamline the presidency's administrative functions to eliminate redundancy. There are many people that are hired therein, friends, relatives, in-laws, outlaws of the president. You find them somewhere in the structure there. Doing what? Nothing. And yet they're earning plenty of money. We've got to stop this. We've got to reduce wasteful expenditure on redundant offices that are duplicated, such as RDCs, deputy RDCs, assistant RDCs. We've talked about this. We've got to implement transparent financial management systems for classified expenditure. Yes, it is classified, but one, let it be justifiable. And two, let it make sense. There's got to be a form of accountability in that regard. Foreign affairs. Uganda lacks a coherent foreign policy with outdated mission charters that have been unchanged since 2014. Imagine that. And weak consular services. Thousands of migrant workers, especially in the Middle East, face exploitation, confiscated passports, and unpaid wages, with minimal embassy support. Unstructured labor agreements hinder labor export growth. We implore that this is done. One, that we develop a comprehensive and updated foreign policy framework. And you find our alternative in that big compendium. Do find time and read it, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to expand and modernize consular services to offer better support to Ugandans abroad. We've got to establish enforceable labor agreements to protect migrant workers. These are Ugandans, even when they're out of this country. Why should we abandon them? And we've got to rationalize diplomatic missions to optimize costs and impact. Justice and constitutional affairs. I'm just giving a summary of some of the sectors that are in that big compendium. You'll find time and read the others. Uganda's justice system faces a deep crisis marked by weak legal frameworks, systemic human rights violations, limited access to justice, high crime rate, and a collapse of the rule of law. The government has deliberately undermined judicial independence, leading to a constitutional crisis. Corruption remains rampant with low recovery of stolen public funds, while security structures fail to protect citizens. These failures, ladies and gentlemen, threaten social stability and economic progress. This is what we must do. One, strengthen judicial independence by increasing its funding and reducing executive interference. You will hear Mr. Museveni say, you judges will not allow you to take us back to the old days and so on. What happened to independence? Let them operate as should be. We've got to expand legal aid programs to ensure access to justice for all citizens. and also enforce anti-corruption measures to hold officials accountable. Then enhance human rights protections through improved monitoring and enforcement mechanisms. Science and technology sector. The science, technology, and innovation sector in Uganda faces significant challenges, including widespread corruption and mismanagement of funds, as evidenced by the lack of transparency in projects like Kira Motors, which was famed as the thing that is going to ameliorate Uganda. There's others like Banana Industrial Research Development Center. Many initiatives, such as Day Biopharma, received billions of shillings before proper agreements were in place, leading to wastage of taxpayer money. This Day Biopharma was given over 723 billion shillings. No agreement. This is a private entity. These are the fellows who promised us a COVID vaccine, you remember? They came huffing and puffing and saying, we have got the cure. COVID came and went. The cure never surfaced. When we visited the entity, they told us the following month we are going to begin producing medicines. It's now over 6 months. There's nothing happening there. And they're asking for more money. Ridiculous. And all of this is taxpayer money. There's no memorandum of understanding between government and this entity, a private entity. Government said they're buying shares. We asked, what's the worth? We asked the MD of this entity, what's your worth as a company? And he was gambling. But government is saying we are buying stock. What stock are you buying? You know, when we say we have got a ridiculous government, some people think we are saying that for political, I don't know, excitement. But it's good when you look at some of the figures. That's how you know how ridiculous things are. Now, this Kira Motors, they promised to be producing 2,500 buses annually. The last we checked, they were producing 39. We don't even know where those 39 are. But they keep coming with a budget to Parliament. When we say, no, this money here is what we should put in healthcare, our colleagues on the other side, and they say, no, you people are against development. We need to establish a national science technology law to regulate intellectual property and innovation commercialization. Stronger accountability measures for government-funded projects. Let me talk a bit about the public sector. Uganda's public service faces systemic crises, not just a crisis, but crises, plural, including severe brain drain due to uncompetitive salaries, corruption-ridden district service commissions selling jobs to unqualified candidates, and a bloated bureaucracy with 295,000 unfilled positions. The sector suffers from discriminatory remuneration, outdated manual systems, causing pension delays, and a grossly, and this might annoy some of you, a grossly oversized parliament. Colleagues, we are 529 members of parliament for 46 million people. That's not right. I can see some of you looking at me angrily, but it's the reality. It is the reality. You have a parliament this huge. When we all show up in parliament, we actually don't have where to sit. People stand, others sit on other people's laps, and we are there. They've been promising to complete the new chambers. I think the initial completion date was 2019. We are in 2025. Every morning as I climb to go to my office, I hear people knocking things with hammers, but we don't know what progress is happening there. But they'll knock to make you think they're doing some work. That is ROCO, by the way, which was given taxpayer money. And there's nothing happening there. But I'll tell you what I think. Parliament spends billions of shillings to rent offices for all of us as MPs, all staff, Kingdom Kampala, Development House, and so on. Billions of shillings. Could it be that the owners of these facilities are probably, in one way or another, engineering the delay of our chambers? Because for as long as our chambers are complete, Parliament will not be spending billions of shillings to hire officers for MPs and staff. No. But we are in 2025, and there's not much happening there. Your guess is as good as mine, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, in addition to that, we have got dozens upon dozens of presidential advisors, many of whom never meet him at all. You normally see them saying, now that I've got you at this function, let me tell you what I have to tell you. And a few, when he meets them, he's the one advising them. These things have got to change, ladies and gentlemen. We've got nearly 100 ministers. Whenever we need them in Parliament to respond to critical issues, they are absent. But they are there. Everybody and their mother has now become a minister. See some ridiculous fellows. And I'm saying ridiculous fellows because of the way they talk and operate. They are there also, honorable minister. This drama has got to change if we want to have a better country. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to establish a National Salaries Review Commission to ensure fair and competitive pay for public servants. That's something that has got to happen. So that even the salary of members of parliament is determined by this same commission. And everybody else. That's how you grow a country. Today you have science teachers earning 3 or nearly 4 times what their arts colleagues are earning. But they're teaching the same schedules, the same duration, they sit in the same staff room. And you're saying you want to prop up sciences. But as you're doing that, schools don't have laboratories. Some of these children, they encounter burettes, test tubes, Bunsen burners, and all these other reagents for the first time in their final exam. But you say you're promoting sciences. I don't know what's wrong with us. We've got to digitize payroll and pension systems to reduce fraud and delays. And then reduce redundant government agencies to improve efficiency. And strengthen anti-corruption measures in hiring processes. You know that people in this country are hired to very high offices without qualifications. But because they are known by somebody who knows another, they get into those offices. And when that company is making losses year after year, you wonder why. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to realize why. Let me talk a bit about defense. The defense sector in Uganda faces significant challenges, including porous borders that facilitate illegal arms trafficking and terrorist infiltration. Poor accountability in budget allocations with opaque classified expenditures that I talked about, and inadequate welfare for UPDF soldiers, such as LoP, poor housing, and under-equipped medical facilities. These foot soldiers, and colleagues, I want to implore you to feel sorry for them and for us to fight to see that they get what they deserve. Police officers, soldiers, prison staff, especially the junior ones, they earn too little. And then they live like refugees in their own country. It's a problem that has got to be fixed. Maybe that's why they behave the way they do behave. Some of them have got mental health issues. The fellow left home, there is no food. The children are sent away for school fees. Maybe that's why they treat us the way they do. See them beating an opposition leader or a journalist for that matter. And you wonder, where is this person's anger emanating from? Now you know. And I'm not justifying anything, by the way. But I'm only trying to be logical as a leader. That you don't expect people who live this way, who are treated this way, they'll find, because they will not go after their bosses. They'll come after the population because they're angry and hungry. We've got to change this as a country. We have got the UPDFs in discipline and professionalism that are undermined by politicization and lawful civilian trials in military courts. Very problematic issue. Even after the Supreme Court says the court-martial should not try civilians. We have several of these, our young people that are still held in jail. The likes of Yasin Machete, Sheriff Kalanzi, Anthony Agaba, also known as Bobby Young, and several others. They're still there. And then we say we have got rule of law. We've got to address these issues, colleagues, for us to have the kind of country that we will cherish. Of course, there's unchecked foreign deployments without parliamentary sanction. They deployed the UPDF in South Sudan and then came to parliament belatedly. And even the speaker, which I found problematic, the speaker said, no, we're not going to debate this issue because it's of huge diplomatic concern. So why are we there as parliament? Why? Because said, no, this one passed it immediately and then adjourned the house and ran away. Hey. Why are we then present? So that shows you that there's something fishy about some of these engagements. Of course, there are other concerns: human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings and suppression of dissent, which further erode public trust. Additionally, this sector, defense, suffers from redundant funding, ghost soldiers on payrolls, and militarization of civilian roles, contradicting constitutional mandates for a non-partisan army. We strongly urge, one, we've got to improve welfare for UPDF personnel, including salaries, housing, and healthcare. We've got to enhance accountability for defense expenditures, particularly classified budgets. Then strengthen border security to prevent illegal arms trafficking, and improve training and equipment for national security forces. Let me talk about agriculture, which is a favorite for Madame Agnes Chirabo. She's very passionate about that, and rightly so. Government has not prioritized public spending on the agricultural sector, despite the AU CAP Malabo 2014 and the recent 2025 Kampala declarations for at least 10% allocation of the national budget to this sector. Budget allocation to the sector has stagnated at less than 3% of the national budget, with a component of more than 50% as external financing. The sectoral growth rate is at 3.8% out of the recommended 6%. About 40% of the agricultural processing factories countrywide are non-functional, but they tell us they are factories. With our tea and coffee factories operating capacity at only about 50%. So instead of bolstering that, they're now putting up new ones, which are being given free taxpayers' money. Additionally, farmers are still faced with the challenge of agricultural extension and advisory services. Access to agriculture, credit, and finance is problematic. That's at about 12%. The high cost of agricultural inputs and the influx of counterfeits, that's at 30%. The cries in the fisheries subsector. Fishermen are always hounded, beaten, killed because of trying to eke out a living. Limited progress on access to water for agricultural production. Deteriorating prices of agricultural products on the world market, among others. Many Ugandans are malnourished. If you read reports from entities like Food Rights Alliance, many of our young people are malnourished. And yet, Uganda has got nearly half of all the arable land in East Africa. That's land suitable for agriculture. Nearly half of all the arable land in East Africa is here in Uganda. But we have people starving. This is what we must do. One, adhere to the implementation of the National Agricultural Finance Policy to align it with the Malabo 2014 and Kampala CAP 2025 declarations, and commitment to align with NDP 4 targets. We've got to revamp the National Seed Company, expedite the National Agricultural Extension Strategy, finalize the National Irrigation Master Plan, and then urgently operationalize the Fisheries and Aquaculture Act of 2022. There's the tourism sector. Tourism has got a lot of potential in this our country, but it is neglected. Limited funding happening there. The infrastructure leading to some of these game parks is in a sorry state. I remember there's a time some tourists got stuck on a road for a day and a half, and the minister, the then Minister of State for Tourism, said that that's part of the tourism experience, for them to see what a third world country is like. So these guys were stuck for nearly 2 days trying to push their car. because they took off time from their country for maybe 4 days to come and spend some dollars here in Uganda. But for 2 days, they're stuck on the road. And the one Chiwanda Subi, who was the Minister of State for Tourism then, said that's part of the tourism experience. Those are Museveni's ministers. Let me talk about trade, industry, and cooperative sector. Or maybe I'll let you read that to you. There's water and environment sector, which is also very critical. I want to encourage us to read so that I don't take too long here. Look at the proposals that we have therein: strengthening enforcement of environmental protection laws, investing in reforestation and wetland restoration programs, improving access to clean water, particularly in rural areas. Many Ugandans today don't have access to clean water. Enhancing waste management infrastructure to reduce pollution. There's the energy sector. And we are saying we've got to expand rural electrification through off-grid solar and mini-grid solutions. Only about 30% of our country is connected to the national grid. 70% are in darkness. I know it's difficult for you here in Kampala to believe that 70% of our country is not connected to the national grid. These are things that we need to deal with. There's the water and transport sector. And I'll urge us to read that component too. Lands, housing, and urban sector. Critical concerns there. Our shadow minister is always talking about them. Gender, labor, and social development. Let me talk about internal affairs. The internal affairs sector in Uganda faces key challenges, including underfunding for security and law enforcement, inadequate police infrastructure, corruption, and human rights concerns. Other issues include slow service delivery in immigration and national identification processes, risking cybercrime, and congestion in correctional facilities due to case backlog and limited rehabilitation programs. We've got to do this. One, increase funding for recruitment, training and equipping the police force to improve security and public trust. Many of you know that when you have a challenge and you call on police to come to your aid, they will struggle to come because you find there's one car for I don't know how many sub-counties. Then many times they don't have fuel, genuinely so. During the killings in Masaka, a committee of parliament went and interacted with, I think it was one of the OC station, one of those regional fellows. And this guy was honest with them and said, look, I've got one car for most of this place, and many times it does not have fuel. So people call us saying machete-wielding men are here, and we cannot move. And I remember a minister coming out to the Minister for Security, Honorable Jim Owezi. He came out to castigate this police officer, and in fact wanted to sanction him. It was until the public said, but the man is speaking the truth. There's just one truck in that whole region area, that specific one where the committee was. Many times it doesn't have fuel. And he said, now, with my little salary, should I be the one fueling this car when people call? And he said, genuinely, people call for help. I want to help, but how do I help? And Muhwezi was saying he's making government look bad, as opposed to availing what is required. We've got to strengthen cybersecurity measures and digital forensic capabilities to combat online crime, which is increasing by the day. We've got to expand fire stations across the country to ensure a timely response to fire outbreaks, improve efficiency in passport issuance, border security, and national ID registration. Enhance rehabilitation programs in prisons to reduce recidivism and promote reintegration into society. Strengthen anti-corruption mechanisms within law enforcement agencies to eliminate bribery and misconduct. Promote community policing initiatives to foster better relations between law enforcement and citizens. Some of the community policing that happens today, you see one general dam leader going to talk bad about the opposition and to recruit people into NRM. That's not what policing, community policing should be. But the likes of General Damulida have interpreted it that way. He'll go to the ghettos and say, these Chagulanyis, they are bad people. You come, we join this party and work together. So to him, that's the brilliant idea of community policing. We've got to strengthen enforcement of disciplinary action against errant officers who violate the law, in the conduct of their duties, especially those who brutalize the citizenry. Let me conclude this way. Our alternative budget priorities focus on investing in key sectors such as healthcare, education, agriculture, and infrastructure to drive inclusive development. Adequate funding for public hospitals, support for small-scale farmers, improvements in education, and investment in sustainable infrastructure are essential for building an economy that benefits all Ugandans. We advocate for a budget that centers on the people's needs, fostering a more just and prosperous Uganda. This kind of budget is achievable once we put people first and combat corruption, which is eating up the resources meant to deliver services to the citizenry. For as long as we keep losing over 10 trillion shillings a year, as per the IGG report, there is just no way, ladies and gentlemen, that we shall have resources to invest in these priority sectors. Those who steal taxpayers' money are promoted and pampered, as opposed to being locked up in jail and forced to return the stolen loot. We have all watched the debate regarding the Umeme concession that comes to an end today. Government entered into a bad deal with this company, like they normally do with many of these agreements they sign. Years ago, this deal was detrimental to the country, as they normally do with many other deals and agreements. Today, Umeme says government owes them $234 million US. Government told Parliament that it owes $190 million US. While the Auditor General says the figure is only $118 million. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what theft looks like. This, exactly. When you have a figure, $234 million. Government is saying $190 million. Auditor General, who is part of government, is saying, no, it is $118 million US. Somebody wants to rip off the taxpayer along the way. There's no way this country can develop with such confusion. Because even the Auditor General's figure of $118 million US, some of us are saying we want to scrutinize that. And that's what we told the presiding officer on that day. We said, you have told us you've received a report from the Auditor General saying the figure is $118 million US. And you're asking us to pass it as Parliament. What are we passing? I am very sure even the presiding officer had not read that report. I am sure. They didn't know what the contents of that report were. But then you're saying, quickly, let's pass it so that we deal with this issue. Yes, we don't want the country to lose money, but what exactly are we passing? We protested, but our colleagues on the other side say, the eyes have it. But are we sure of what the exact money is? Because even the Auditor General's reports, normally they are brought to Parliament, we scrutinize them. Because there can be gaps therein. Because now who should we believe? Somebody somewhere is not telling the true story regarding Umeme. And I can assure you we are going to dig up until we get to the bottom of the truth. So that taxpayers' money is not taken for a ride. I'd like to implore us all as a country to say no to these machinations and get our country in order. As the opposition, let's continue to keep the government in check, even as we work hard to send it off so that Ugandans can have a government that is accountable to them and prioritizes their well-being. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As I leave the stage, I just want to appreciate colleagues with whom we do this work. I know Honorable Helen talked about the shadow cabinet. I want to very much appreciate members of the shadow cabinet. Thank you. I normally harass you, and I'm using the word harass in bold and underline so that we get to do our work, so that we have these alternatives in place. So I'm normally bothering you, please, how far with this, with the technical team and so on. So I want to appreciate all of you for all the work that you do put in. And the technical staff, those ones I harass a lot more. For you, your colleagues, so sometimes I have to restrain myself. But I want to appreciate the technical team led by the director for all the hard work. We are going to work even harder. We have a small team, as you know. People's contracts ended. Parliament said there is no money to renew contracts of staff from the office of the leader of the opposition. I said, wow, but you're recruiting new people every day. Where did that money come from that cannot take care of these ones? That's the ridiculousness of politics. So with a very small team, we work day and night to see to it that we produce this work, because it is important that Ugandans see this here is a credible government in waiting. So I want to appreciate you all. Our Shadow Finance Minister should have been here. He's out of town on some engagements, but I do appreciate him and the rest of us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me now invite an OB of this place. He was here quite briefly, but he was around, and his presence was felt. The leader of the National Unity